Good morning. Thank you for joining me this morning, and welcome to day 100 of this journey known as coronavirus in Savannah. More on that in a moment. We've had another busy week of peaceful protests, gatherings, and demonstrations in our city. I personally attended many of these gatherings, and I thank Chief Mentor and his command staff for also attending and participating in these gatherings. I think it's important that our police department is present in this historical moment. Savannah continues to come together to denounce the horrific death of George Floyd, but more importantly, to demand change for the future. To that end, as I have previously announced, I've accepted former President Obama's challenge to review use of force procedures within our community and to commit to reporting on plan reforms before prioritizing their implementation. Most of these efforts in this pledge fall in line with the 21st century policing recommendations, which I'm proud to say are largely followed by the Savannah Police Department. We will be conducting an extensive review of the use of force policies of the Savannah Police Department, engaging the public about their experiences, reporting our findings, and then reforming our policies, procedures, and ultimately our personnel as we ensure that police officers who do not want to protect and serve do not serve as Savannah police officers. This commitment is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. This effort is in addition to a blue ribbon task force I am appointing to investigate and provide solutions for inequities and disparities of all kinds using data. We will see where the data leads us, and from there we will devise solutions to be able to address whatever we find. It does not make sense to address one side of an equation without addressing the entire equation. This effort will place Savannah in a leading position of using data to drive solutions, particularly as it relates to race and class in this country. Former Mayor and noted social scientist Dr. Otis Johnson will help guide our community to meaningful and permanent change through this effort. This is a critical and defining moment of time. We will not miss or squander this opportunity. But let's be very clear. Every police officer is not bad. Every police officer doesn't abuse the law. Every police officer doesn't abuse use of force continuums. And as we denounce officers that do the wrong thing, I think it's important for us to support and highlight the police officers in our city who are doing the right thing day in and day out. We cannot, should not, and will not lump every police officer into the same group. We want you to use the hashtag SAV, S-A-V, police hero. And we want you to share selfies and stories of good officers making a difference in our community every single day. I point to Sergeant Billy Gray over there, who does a wonderful job here at City Hall, and I'll be taking my first selfie with him. Again, we have to highlight and accentuate the positive. And I'm asking our media outlets to help us to do the same thing. Now, we understand there's a lot of work to do, but we also understand that there are officers on our streets day in and day out doing good work. As has been widely reported, we are aware that Savannah is being considered to host at least portions of the 2020 National Republican Convention. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to briefly greet Governor Brian Kemp and Marsha Lee Kelly, the President and CEO of the 2020 Republican National Convention. As I understand it, there are at least 2 other cities who are also interested in hosting this gathering. I am and remain strongly concerned about the impact that a convention of this magnitude would have on the health, safety, and welfare of our city, our citizens, and of course, our city budget. I'm reminded that we are still currently in a pandemic, and we share many of the same concerns that Charlotte, North Carolina has expressed. That being said, I am not privy to or familiar with any formal proposal or plans related to the convention, but I am waiting to hear what their findings are and what they have to say. We are the hostess city of the South. We are a welcoming city. We are working hard on becoming the beloved city. But even in the midst of a major economic opportunity like hosting one of the 2 major political conventions in our city, I'm still reminded that we are still in a pandemic. In other developments, the City of Savannah has entered phase 1 of our Safer Services reopening plan. We have resumed regular residential sanitation services. Trash, recycling, and yard waste will again be picked up according to your regular schedule. Our sanitation department does anticipate some delays due to backlog collections. We're asking you to call 311 or 912-651-6579, 912-651-6579 if your items are not collected on your usual day. We have started easing some of the restrictions in our facilities, but there are still some strict requirements that city employees and visitors must follow before entering a government building. Face coverings must be worn in all City of Savannah buildings. Visitors will be allowed in designated public areas, but they must wear a face covering. We will provide a face covering if they do not have one. Employees will have temperature checks when entering city facilities. Anyone with a fever of 100.4 degrees or higher won't be allowed into a workplace, and they will be required to get tested for COVID-19 later that day. We are also working to increase social distancing in workplaces and partitions to ensure separation, and upgrade our HVAC filtration and circulation to keep our staff safe. Starting this Friday, we will be adding safety protocols to Graveside funeral services in the City of Savannah for the City of Savannah-owned cemeteries, including Bonaventure, Greenwich, Laurel Grove North, and Laurel Grove South. Attendees are required to observe social distancing of 6 feet. A maximum of 25 people may attend a Graveside funeral service. That 25-person limit includes funeral home staff and funeral attendees. Cemetery and vault personnel are excluded. All funeral services are limited to 1 hour from the time of arrival to the time of dismissal, and that will be enforced. A family tent with a maximum of 8 chairs is permitted as long as there is proper social distancing. Families may observe a grave's closing, but they must move and remain at least 10 feet from the grave site. Now, we understand that's a lot to ask of all parties, particularly those that are going through some of the hardest times of their life. However, we continue to believe that these measures are important and imperative to protect the community's health and well-being, funeral home staff, and city staff. We appreciate in advance your understanding and cooperation. If you have any questions or concerns, you can call the City Cemetery Division at 912-651-6843, 912-651-6843. 6843. We met with city funeral homes last week, so they are aware of these changes. And this policy goes into effect this Friday and will be in place until further notice. The city is expanding our outdoor dining program to include bars. Bars will be approved for expanded seating in their parklets based on neighborhood input. Customers must always remain seated. Customers must always remain seated. Interested businesses must complete the permit application on the city's website, savannahga.gov. savannahga.gov. Interested businesses, I said that already. So we are currently exploring the extension of the pilot program beyond June 15th, and we will share more details on those plans later on this week. Work is ongoing at Dundee Village, the city's alternate and innovative housing facility for our homeless citizens. The weather has caused the most significant delays on this project, and we are now waiting on the construction of the on-site office space, restroom, and laundry facilities. City staff estimate that it will be 3 to 5 weeks before the first residents can stay there. It's important to us that we do it right the first time. Remember that today is a particularly important day in our state, as Georgia's primary, presidential, and nonpartisan elections are today. If you have not voted, go vote. Polls close at 7 p.m. Now, I will tell you that from 6 o'clock this morning, a little after 6, up until a few moments ago, I've been inundated with calls and messages from citizens that have faced extensive delays at polling places across our community. This appears to be a widespread issue, as individuals have told me that they've had to go to work, or in some cases, they were asked to come back at a later time. I will be reaching out to the elections, Board of Elections, to express my concerns that it's important that we get this right. And certainly, we've had enough time and enough delays at this point where it should be right. And so just for purpose of clarification, the city of Savannah has nothing to do with the Board of Elections, has nothing to do with polling places, nothing to do with machines. So I don't know why people are necessarily calling me, but I felt I had a duty to be able to pass that on. And so again, there are, what is being reported to us, extensive issues. I will remind our citizens that among the most important things you can do, this is your fundamental right and responsibility to living in a civilized society. And I know today is muggy, I know today may be a bit hot, and I know that today it might rain. I need you to hang in there. I need you to stick with it. And for those who have absentee ballots still, you can go home, fill out your absentee ballot, and you can bring it and drop it off at the voter registration office until 7 o'clock tonight. So for those that have had those delays, again, you can complete your absentee ballot and still fill it out. But again, I'll be reaching out to our Board of Elections today just to express my concern. It's been communicated with us by our citizens. You could also check your voter status at mvp.sos.ga.gov. www.mvp.sos.ga.gov. If you're requesting an absentee ballot and have not mailed it off, you could also bring it to you with the polls as well, so we want to make sure you know that. If you've lost your ballot, you can still vote, but it might take a few extra minutes. As a reminder, we still need you to complete your 2020 census. Right now, we are at a response rate at 50.8%, which is only a 1.1 increase since last Thursday. We are still behind Albany, Atlanta, Augusta, and Charleston. And so again, we are encouraging Savannah to stand up and be counted. You can do this, we can do better. We need your help to make sure that our kids, our neighborhoods, and our city, that we have what we need for the next 10 years. And you can go to www.my2020census.gov. www.my2020census.gov. Finally, if we did not have to be reminded already, we are in hurricane season. And what has already seemed to be a very busy hurricane season. We want to make sure that you're ready, make sure that you have a plan. We want to remind you that now is the time to get prepared, particularly and especially because we're in the middle of a pandemic. The Chatham Emergency Management Organization has a plethora of information and helpful tips, and we're asking you to go to their website, www.chathamemergency.org, www.chathamemergency.org for helpful preparation tips. With that being said, I end my prepared remarks and will entertain any questions you may have. And please use the microphone. And I extend my apologies to those people who like Wendy Williams, because I've been told that I've been interrupting Wendy Williams. I apologize.
Mayor, can you talk a little bit, some of the conversations you had today, have you spoken with the Board of Elections already? What do you expect to explain in that conversation? What's the voice? Obviously, a lot of people want to get out and vote right now.
Sure. I've posted on my page that we were having concerns and directed them to the Board of Elections. Today, this morning, I intend to call them personally. And again, my message to people is that we've gone this far. Do not let this turn you around. Insist that they get it right, and insist on your right and the ability to vote. Don't get discouraged and say, I'm done, I'm turning around. No, I mean, we're here now. And again, there's so many races from the President of the United States all the way down to county commissioners that are so important that we need to make sure people weigh in on. And so we don't want to leave that to chance. We want to make sure people have the chance to be heard and their voice be counted.
Mayor, you mentioned on Twitter a couple days ago that you were unaware that the basketball tournament could be hosted in Savannah. There kind of seems to be a lack of communication between you and the governor. Is that something that you kind of feel?
I won't say it was necessarily the governor. Again, I think it was a miscommunications of individuals locally that different people thought different people were going to tell us, and so I think we have that resolved. I suspect that we do. I've made it clear that the city of Savannah wants to be involved, and we want to be engaged, and we want to be informed. So again, it's only been 5 months. There is a new world order, and so I think we're going to be okay going forward.
Mr. Mayor, you had, going back to the RNC and just your concerns about the safety of people who live here in Savannah and whatnot, some people might argue that being a known Democrat, that it would have something to do with politics. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. The reality is that, first of all, Savannah is a nonpartisan city. I fully recognize and embrace the fact that I represent Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians. I'm the mayor for Savannah. That being said, a pandemic doesn't care whether you're a Democrat, Republican, independent, or nonpartisan. So this has really nothing to do with politics. Again, I have not said no to it. What I've said is that we're in the middle of a pandemic. And in my mind, there are a variety of questions that have yet to be answered. And I've told the governor that I want to have that conversation with him, and he indicated he was open to it. The first thing, again, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and you're bringing people literally from all over the country into a space that is relatively small like Savannah, where people congregate in very close proximity. And we know from the science that that is how this virus spreads. So that's the first concern. The second concern is as it relates to people who come to our city. We recognize that there are law enforcement solutions for those high-profile individuals that might be at the Trade Center, but there are a bunch of people who come, and that is usually relegated to local police departments. And certainly after COVID-19, our city budgets are severely depleted, and I'm really concerned about our ability to be able to fund an unfunded mandate like all of these individuals coming in town. So that's the second concern. And the third concern deals with protesters. There are protesters, as we know, from Cleveland and other places that come from all over the country. And again, our ability to be able to protect our citizens is paramount in my mind. So with all that under consideration, those are some of the concerns that I have. I mean, no doubt, this is a major economic opportunity for our community that needs a shot in the arm economically. It's a major way to fill hotels. It's a major way to fill restaurants. It's a major way to spend money here in goods and services. But then also, as mayor, I'm charged with being able to balance the two. And so my position at this point is I'm weighing the two. And so I need those other questions to be answered before I can even weigh in, I think, appropriately on the economic impact. Because sometimes money is not worth everything. So that's where I am.
And my other question for you, Mr. Mayor, talking about voting today, we were at the polls earlier talking to some voters that were very frustrated, saying that they saw a lot of people turning around, going home. I mean, some people just don't have the time to go back today. They were making the time to go to the polls in the first place. And so do you think that this could be a contributing factor to some less people voting here in our area?
Well, absolutely. I actually have heard from folks around the state that have experienced issues related to voting for some reason today. I'm hoping that the Board of Elections will consider the gravity of the situation, perhaps extending the voting hours to 8 or 9 o'clock today to allow people to vote. Again, I mean, you know, people come and they recognize that they're going to have to stay in line for at least a period of time. But then, you know, I'm hearing that you get to a poll at 6:45 and it's 7:30 and the polls are still not up. That's an issue because, again, people have to be able to work. So whatever it is, I hope that they get it together soon, and I hope that we're able to devise a solution to be able to help those who want to participate. And again, my message to our citizens is do not give up. Don't give up. Don't let this frustration just turn you off from the process. And for whatever it's worth, we have another election. Well, we'll have at least a couple of runoff elections, and we'll have an election in November. So whatever the issues are, we need to get them fixed quickly. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you had mentioned the financial strain of policing the RNC if it were to come to Savannah. Kind of circling back to the city's economy, I know that you guys have a 75-day reserve, I believe, and that obviously is dependent on, you know, hopefully the economy bouncing back very fast. And we know with COVID-19, that's really not the case. So I know you were trying to avoid furloughs and things like that, but what are we looking at now going into the future?
Well, right now we're still, I think, in a decent position. Again, we have stopped our hazard pay. Most of our employees are now phasing in, returning back to work. And again, it just really depends on where the economy goes from here. How do we handle that from here? So again, I know the city manager and his team are looking at that. I know that they have and are putting in place some contingency plans and options for council to review if it gets to that point. You know, again, fortunately for us, this is what we do all of the time. So again, we plan contingencies for the contingencies. So at the point at which our situation changes, I expect, and the city manager has indicated he will come to council and say, you know, this is what our situation is, and this is his plan or recommendations to be able to address it.
When we're talking about
budget, I know Governor Kemp, I believe it was last month, ordered several state agencies to cut 14% of their spending. Is that something Savannah would look at in terms of the budget, asking certain agencies to cut their funding?
Well, again, I think that the city managers already, we've cut spending in several line items in city departments, which I think has helped. And again, the benefit we have is that we've planned for rain in the days of sun. So that's why we're okay to this point. It will get to the point, if things don't improve, where I think all options will be on the table, and it will be up to city council to decide which actions we're going to have to take. So for us, again, I think, good planning, conservative budgeting, conservative forecasting has allowed us to be in this situation. So again, we're just prayerful.
And then my last question would be protests. So we kind of see these happening every weekend, throughout the week, and it doesn't look like they're ending anytime soon. So is there kind of some organized response by the city that you kind of have this plan going forward? I know you said yourself and Chief Minter are participating in those, but now is there an organized plan going forward?
Well, again, the great part about having a world-class accredited police department is that this plan has always been in place about how to deal with these types of situations. So, it was no need for us to create a plan. There's a plan already in place. And so what you have seen is really an opportunity for the police department and the city, by extension, to support the right to protest. We've had protests every day in front of City Hall all last week. And so as we learn about them, the police have been engaged and involved to really protect the protesters' right to be able to protest. And I think, again, the presence of Chief Minter, the presence of the command staff there, under sometimes circumstances that are not favorable, because some things I've heard were, really mean. I think, shows that the city is committed, the city police department is committed to being a part of the solution.
To start off, I guess, additionally in the line of protest, a lot of people are calling for a defunding of the police department. Is that something you guys are talking about or looking at? What's the stance here in Savannah?
From my perspective, absolutely not. I think I think the word defund is an oxymoron, particularly when a government's primary responsibility is public safety. Everybody will say, we don't want the police until they need the police. We would have absolute anarchy. What people are really saying is that they want responsible policing. And to that end, I think that the city, particularly with this council coming into office in January, has really started this track of talking about how do we put more money into prevention than we put into enforcement. So the city is, I think, already at the tip of that curve. I've mentioned very publicly that I am a proponent of what was known as Savannah Impact. Savannah Impact was a world-class, state-of-the-art program that really engaged police officers in the public, with those who had records, with those who have had issues with the law, and to work with them to make sure that they had jobs, work with them that they got work skills, help them build relationships with police. That program, as many of you know, was defunded some years ago, and they moved those officers into more enforcement roles. Again, I am very supportive of Savannah Impact. My hope and expectation and my plea to council is that we consider bringing that back, because I think, again, that's what we're talking about, police and community. That's community-oriented policing. The other thing is that as it relates to what we call our Police Athletic League program, we call it the PALS program. And this is where law enforcement officers actually engage with young people in the communities. In New York, I am a product of the Police Athletic League in not only youth sports, but also in karate that I took as a child. And again, it was police officers. And here we have police officers that had their own families but would take off their own time to mentor kids in sports and football and basketball. And again, those are the types of things we want to be able to bring back. So, so defund the police department, in my mind, no, in the term defund, smarter spending on preventative services, absolutely.
Additionally, we got word from the Secretary of State's office that basically said the issues we've seen here locally in Fulton, Gwinnett counties are not a result of the machines, but rather user errors on the part of the volunteers and these types of things. I mean, can you speak a little bit? They say this is a function of engaging in poor planning, limited training, and failures of leadership.
Repeat that?
The Secretary of State's office says that essentially we have reports of co-workers not understanding setup, how to operate voting equipment. While these are unfortunate, they're not issues of the equipment, but a function of counties engaging in poor planning.
Wow. Talk about throwing under the bus. I mean, I don't care whose issue it is. The fact is, people should come, and when they come to present themselves to vote, they should be able to vote. And so it's up to the Secretary of State and our local Board of Elections or whomever it is to get it right. I don't think this is a time to find fault, this is a time to find solutions. So whatever it is, when our residents in the city of Savannah appear within the time specified to vote, they should have the expectation that they're able to vote. So however it is, it just needs to be fixed.
Last question for you. The governor yesterday said, from his remarks with you, that it was a positive conversation, you were welcoming of visitors to Savannah. Is that the sentiment that was given during that conversation?
I welcomed Ms. Kelly and the governor to Savannah, shook their hands, and had some brief conversation with Ms. Kelly, who was commenting about how beautiful Savannah was. She'd never been here, and I said, well, certainly welcome back to visit us. Told the governor I would love to talk to him, and that was the end of the conversation. And then I left. So.
Mayor Johnson, real quickly, other cities across our country have removed some of their Confederate statues in light of recent events. Has there been any discussion about renaming the Thomas Bridge? I know there was a discussion a few years back.
No. I think what I've been trying to educate people on lately, because people look at stuff happening around the country, we could do that in Savannah. Well, no, actually, the bridge, formerly known as the Talmadge Bridge, or whatever the name of the bridge is, because there's been some confusion about what the bridge actually is. If it's a replacement bridge, does it still have the name Talmadge or whatever that is? That is a function of the state of Georgia. And so the state of Georgia is responsible for naming the bridge. The city council, previous city council, sent a resolution requesting that the bridge be named the Savannah Bridge. I know there were various efforts to name it other things. I think our position is it should still be named the Savannah Bridge. I call it the Savannah Bridge. As far as monuments of all sorts throughout our country, throughout our community, the state of Georgia had passed a law a few years ago forbidding city governments from moving monuments, moving or removing monuments. So again, this is not something that city council can vote to do. It's not something that a mayor can dictate be done. State law is very clear, and maybe preemptively so about as it relates to this. So we will just remind people that if you are disgruntled, that's one thing. If you're angry, that's something else. If you're anxious, that's fine. But it is against the law to deface public property. And so I'm asking people to show your disgust in more appropriate ways, but again, it's illegal to deface public property. And we're asking, please, that they don't do that.
One more question for you, Mayor. You mentioned that with your talks with the governor yesterday, you wanted to have a conversation with them. What is the next step? Are you going to continue to express your concerns to him?
Well, I think at this point, he's very clear through my public remarks of what my concerns are. And I think, to be honest with you, they're reasonable. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm responsible for this community. And so, again, although I see great economic opportunities, again, there are just so many questions that have to be answered. And again, I understand that the visit here yesterday was very preliminary, so I would expect before a decision is made that we're able to have these concerns addressed. Again, I'm not willing to do anything that puts this community at risk, no matter how much money we make from it. I think if we do that, we put our community at longer term risk. I just don't think in that case it's worth it. But if the safety concerns are addressed, and if the funding concerns are addressed, I'm all ears. Again, Savannah is home to everybody, and so we respect people's ability to be able to be here, but we have to keep our people safe.
So do you have a part in the final say of the decision?
I do not. As I understand it, and again, this is very preliminary, that it's the sole discretion of the president of the Republican National Convention, and that she will make a decision based off of decisions by the president himself. And so on that end, the governor, the state of Georgia owns the Savannah Convention Center, and so therefore they can use it for purposes they want to use it for. And again, where the mix comes in is that everything else around it is Savannah, and we're responsible for Savannah. Anything else? Okay. Well, again, we appreciate you all for coming. Did I get it right?